I'm George Rubin. Served in the Army Air Force in the Second World War, a gunner on a B-17 bomber in England.
My name is Daniel Wright, and I'm a senior at Millville High School.
My name is Manuel Melendez, and I'm a senior at the Millville High School as well. What were you fed, and how did the German troops, I'm sure it wasn't great, but how did they treat you while you were there?
All right. Being a prisoner of war was horrible. I mean, that's in general terms. After our capture, and we were in the jail in Sonthofen, there was worry by the authorities that the town people might want to take us out and do harm to us. So after one night, some trucks came and took us to a next village, Landshut. It's about 10 kilometers away, and just to get us out of Sonthofen. We met there another crew, American crew. Their pilot had been killed. When, I don't know. I don't know the details. But in the German vernacular now, or the German way, is two things got to happen. One, you have to be debriefed before you can be sent to a prisoner of war camp. That debriefing is done as what is known as a Dulag Luft in German terms. This was outside the city of Frankfurt. And so we were transported by civilian trains. Now there's about almost 24 of us, our 9 and their 8, with a little German sergeant and about 4 or 5 soldiers on a civilian train. The German sergeant had a little whip, hand whip, and if he didn't like what we were doing, we would get whipped by him. The civilians on the train knew that we were prisoners. They saw our American uniforms, but we stayed in one part of the car, and they didn't bother us, but there was a sense of total antagonism. We were scared. We were, remember, your age. Our pilot was just 20. We had one of the youngest crew. Most of them were 18, 19, pilot was 20 years old. As a matter of fact, we said later, how could a 20-year-old fly this aircraft, this $1 million aircraft, from Lincoln, Nebraska to England, when even our parents today wouldn't let us have a car? So at your age, we're flying a 4-engine bomber across the world, literally. So that we would scared, not sure what was going on, stayed in one corner with this sergeant. It took us almost 4 days to get from Munich, outside Landshut, to Frankfurt. Number one, the rail lines had been bombed. We got to the city of Nuremberg. You had to get off at the south end of the city, walk to the north end of the city to get the next aircraft. Walking through that city in the snow, you have a sense of what it was like. We would see lines and lines of people, mostly men, and mostly women and children. The men are all fighting, lining up at 2 faucets. That's all they had. One to get drinking water each day, and one to get water to clean or to do wash with. And there would be lines there with pails, just trying to get water as we'd walk on. We had no little food that we had run out. Some German bread, some wurst, a little water, we had none. Fortunately, by the 3rd day, outside of Frankfurt, our sergeant found a little jail, a sort of a German jail, which got us some water, so that we had a place to get some provisions. At Dulag Luft, we're put in solitary confinement. The way it is done, you're put into an individual cell, the lights are kept on. Every few hours, a German lieutenant who speaks absolutely perfect English comes in and has a set of questions for you. You're like asking me. Your name and rank and serial number are all you give. I am Sergeant George Rubin, 8232-881-33. I'm in England, and I get, oh, come on now, Sergeant. We know where you flew out of your town. We knew what you had for breakfast. We knew what the target was. Tell us what was going on. You just kept mum. And this would happen every couple of hours if you were sleeping and you only slept in a chair, no bed, with a light on. And that went on for 2 or 3 days. After that, after you left solitary and whatever information they got, you were sent and you were deloused. In other words, you've been in the same clothes now since you were shot down, so you could get a hot shower, and you met now the American commanders who were running the prisoner of war camp. And ours happened to be a major who, you have the aircraft here, a P-47 pilot. And his name was Colonel Stark, Loquacious Stark, they called him. And he explained that you'll be here, you'll now get a Red Cross parcel, you'll get clothes, new GI clothes, and then eventually you'll be told what permanent camp you're going to go to. So each day you'd watch the men leave by either transport or train or trucks to a particular camp. The air camps, they're called the Luftwaffe camps, were all over. The Stalag Luftwaffes were all over Germany, from the Baltic down to the south. And so after 4 or 5 days, I was notified with other members of my crew we were going back to Nuremberg, that the camp we were in was just outside of Nuremberg. And it took us 3 days to get there. One night we were in Regensburg, and Regensburg was being bombed. The British would bomb at night, the Americans would bomb at day. And where did we hide? They found a latrine, a bathroom, that wasn't being used. So all night we stood up in this smelly bathroom while the bombs were coming down. Couldn't even sit anywhere. And eventually we came to Nuremberg. Nuremberg was a large camp. It had been set up by the Germans and the workers that Hitler built. You might have seen it in television, these beautiful stadium that Hitler would give his speeches in Nuremberg. This was the camp that the workers used and the workers lived. When they left, it became a stalag. And there must have been 20, 30,000 troops, American troops, in this camp. And we stayed there for, pretty close to a month, when we were told that we were all leaving and we were all marching south to a camp that was outside of Munich. I'm literally going back to where I started from. We found out later the reason for this was Hitler had a brilliant idea. He was going to move all the Allied prisoners of war into the Alps. And if he did not get a change on the conditions of surrender, he was going to execute all the prisoners. Brilliant scheme. Of course, it never took place. But we did have to move, and we went on what is known as the Long March. It took us 2.5 weeks, at least. You carried everything on your back in rain, in sun, in shine, marched all night, slept in barns during the day sometimes. The Red Cross would try to pick you up out of Switzerland. The Red Cross, the International Red Cross, had started distribution of food to all prisoners. The food we got came from every country in the world. We get parcels from India, parcels from Great Britain, parcels from America, and different kinds of food, some I'd never seen in my life. And you'd get one parcel for 2 men. You had to split it. The parcels were like a small shoebox. And it had everything, crackers, some margarine, some jams, things like that, a powdered milk we call clem. We would set up and make our own food. Some of them made the most delicious dandelion soup you ever had in your life. And this is how we survived. you'd barter with farmers for an egg. They'd love to see some chocolate or cigarettes, so you'd barter with them. And it took us 16 days, and we were marched to a camp that is in the town of Mooseburg. And Mooseburg had been a camp for all international prisoners. When we got there, over 80,000 prisoners of war from France, from Canada, from England, from the United States were pushed into this. We lived in tents for the rest of the time. At that point in the war, Patton and the Third Army were getting close to where we were. They were liberating city after city as they came south. The war was moving on very fast. So what they did was the commander of our camp met with the Allies outside of the camp for conditions of surrender. There's a name for it. And they had an agreement on how they would transfer where we were to the Allied hands. These Germans came back only to find out that the SS decided they were going to hold the camp and fight for it. So we were told by the commander of our camp, who was a general who had been caught, and with him an assistant who had been a British officer caught in Norway during he would have been a prisoner for almost 8 years, during when the Britain were using men to sneak into the Scandinavian countries. He had been caught at that time. And these two men said, the Germans decided they're going to fight for this camp. So our suggestion is dig foxholes, get in, get down as low as you can in the ground, because it's not going to be just a general handoff. And sure enough, as the Allies came closer to the camp, it became a fire battle. And for 3 hours, it was horrible. At least 10, I understand, 10 of the prisoners in our camp were killed. I dug a hole with 2 Canadian seminarians who taught me the Hail Marys that I know even today, Hail Mary. And we stayed in that foxhole until it was over. Of course it was going to be over. And the army came in and said, please don't leave. There will be ways that we're going to get you food, medical help, and tell you how you're going to be evacuated back to other cities. And so that was the adventure of being a prisoner of war, or some of it. There's even more details than that.